Welcome to the second set of notes in Unit 3, the Constitution. This set of notes is going to go over the structure of the Constitution. So what is in each article, as well as just a quick kind of overview of what additions have been added. One way I remember the articles in the order they go in and what kind of each one, the main topic of each one is through this sentence that you see at the bottom here. Large elephants jump slowly and sit regularly. So we're going to kind of go through this, what each one means, but it helps me form which branch goes, which article is which one. Here's a reminder of what the preamble to the Constitution is. All right, so Article 1 is legislative branch. So in your chart, right under the words Article 1, make sure you write legislative branch. You might also want to try to write in there that they're the lawmaking branch. So in my sentence to help me remember, this corresponds to my mnemonic device here is large. For legislative branch, large, LL. Okay, so Article 1. Now, you don't have to write all of this, okay, but you need to get the gist. Okay, so legislative branch, it's bicameral, and there are reasons it's bicameral. There's historical reasons, because Britain had a bicameral legislature, practical, because that solved the issue between the large and small states, and then theoretical, it helped establish checks and balances. It's another way to do separation of powers and checks and balances. But just make sure you remember that it is bicameral to House. It also discusses how senators and representatives are apportioned among the states. So in this case, it's how many senators and representatives do each state get. And then it talks about the qualifications to hold office. It lays out the roles of the House and the Senate in impeachment. It establishes the basic functions of the two houses, and it lists the enumeration of Congress's power. It's in Article 1, Section 8 on that one, but there are 17 specific enumerated powers. So enumerated is a big fancy kind of legalese type of term for listed. There are 17 specific listed powers of Congress in Article 1. It is the largest article of the Constitution as well. Article 2, executive branch. So label under Article 2, the executive branch. This is the enforcement branch. They are the ones that enforce the laws. Excuse me. And in my sentence, my mnemonic sentence, this stands for, this corresponds to elephants. E, executive branch, E, elephants. So Article 2, the executive branch, it talks about how the president and the vice president are elected. And it also covers qualifications for office. So how old does the president have to be, like citizenship, those sorts of things. It also lays out secession. In case of president's death or disability, what is the line of secession? I mean, we have a constitutional amendment that lays out secession, and then a law that actually lays out the full scope of secession, like the full line. But in the actual Constitution in Article 2, it lays out that there's the president, and then like following him is the vice president, and then the Speaker of the House, and then the president pro tempore of the Senate. Grounds for impeachment, like what has to happen or what are the like requirements for a potential impeachment of the president, the vice president, or other executive agencies. And then what are the powers of the president? Now, there's not a specific list like there is in the articles for the president, but there are powers listed on what the president gets to do. Article 3 is your judicial branch, so make sure you label that. And in our mnemonic sentence here is it's jump. So judicial branch, J for jump. This is the Supreme Court building on that picture right there. Article 3 creates the Supreme Court. and authorizes Congress to create lower courts. So the official only court created through the Constitution is the Supreme Court, but it does say and other federally created courts, which means it falls to Congress to do. It establishes rules regarding the judges, so that they're like life tenure, no reducing salary, how do they, the appointment process, those sorts of things. It lists the types of cases that the courts can hear. I give you some examples here. Cases arising under the Constitution, so a law may violate the Constitution, that would fall under this. Cases involving ambassadors or controversies between two states. All of those are examples of the types of cases that the courts, either the Supreme Court or any lower federal court that is created, gets to hear and like decide on. And then it also defines the grounds for treason. So what has to happen, what actions have to be taken for an individual to be accused and eventually convicted of treason. It's not easy. We don't make it easy. But it is there because the Founding Fathers understood that treason could happen. Now, Article 4 is relations among the states. So this is what the states agree to when they ratified this, or when new states get added to the Constitution. They are establishing the type of relationship that they will have with each other. This corresponds to the word slowly, in the sentence, slowly. States must give what are called full faith and credit to judicial decisions and other official actions of other states. So if there's a judgment against Billy Bob because he damaged Barbie's car, then he moves states, the state he moves to will help get that money, like will help garnish the wages, those sorts of things. This also can be with marriage licenses, divorce decrees, adoption records. So I was married in Las Vegas. Of course, I live in Oklahoma. I lived in Oklahoma at the time. But so the state of Oklahoma, under this clause, recognizes that I did get married and recognizes my marriage. States must extradite the accused persons to other states. So if Billy Bob commits a crime and he flees the state, and he flees to Montana, the state of Oklahoma can reach out to Montana and be like, hey, we suspect that Billy Bob is residing within your borders. If you pick him up, we want him back. And sometimes it's an active search, like they're like, we know he's there, and especially if it's dangerous, like murder, kidnapping across state lines, those sorts of things. But then each state is also guaranteed a Republican form of government. This is a promise from the national government, that the national government promises the states have a Republican form of government, which means they elect representatives. Article 5 is about amending the Constitution, and this in our sentence is the word and. So there is a two-step process for amending the Constitution, and it lays it out on how to amend the Constitution. So amendments can be proposed by Congress or state conventions. That's one of two ways. And then it's going to be ratified by 3/4 of the states. And there's actually two different ways that the ratification at the state level can take place. Amending the Constitution is a great example of federalism, which is a term that you will know that we have to know for this unit, and it's one of the founding principles of the Constitution. But this is a great example of federalism. And then Article 6 is the Supremacy Clause. This corresponds with the second S in our sentence with the word sit. So basically the Constitution and federal law and treaties, because they're the same as federal law, is superior to any state law. So if there's a law at this national level that says something is allowed or something is not allowed, then the states cannot make a law that contradicts what is allowed at the national level. A great example of this and also just how sometimes the national government doesn't enforce its laws, is marijuana laws. So many states have various laws on their books that allow different types of marijuana. Some are recreational as well as medical, and some are just medical. Some are just cannabis oil. But at the federal level, there's a law that says marijuana is a class Schedule 1 drug. It's equivalent in the eyes of the federal government to meth, LSD, and cocaine. That's how it's tightly controlled. And so there are laws at the state level that say you can possess marijuana. Should they be able to have that law? Under the Supremacy Clause, no. But because the states, because the federal government gets to determine how they're going to expend, tax dollars, they have decided not to task the FBI with cracking down on these marijuana laws, especially because they're looking to see how can the future of marijuana laws go in this country. So it might end up being that, they're using it as a laboratory in an essence to see what can be future steps for the federal criminalization of marijuana. And then our final article, which is Article 7, which is ratification, and in our sentence, large elephants jump slowly and sit regularly. Ratification goes with regularly. So this essentially establishes that 9 out of the 13 states at the time of 1787 must formally approve of the new Constitution. Okay, so we needed 2/3 of the states at the time. Now, when we add a new state to the Constitution, it doesn't mean that we have that they also have to ratify the Constitution, because there's a process, and within that process they're accepting the laws and rules that have been established under the Constitution. So they don't have to officially ratify the Constitution, but they do agree to live under the Constitution. All right, that wraps up our second set of notes in Unit 3 over the Constitution and constitutional principles. If you have any questions, please let me know. And again, don't do anything too stupid. Until next time. Bye, guys.